We bring in Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South after a big weekend of SEC football.
I think he's the smartest guy in the world too.
Yeah. He picked this one all these weeks back. So Connor, I guess the best question is, since your preseason predictions had Arkansas going 1-9 with the one win being Mississippi State, are you sticking to 1-9, or did you see something Saturday that makes you think Arkansas could surprise someone else?
Well, first, let me just say, I'm so glad you guys remembered, because if you didn't, I was going to remind you of that. Because after the week one that I had when I went 0-6-1, I needed something like that. I needed a little bit of something to show that, hey, I might actually have like a clue, and I mean literally just one single clue as to what I'm doing here in this business. But you know what? I don't hate it. I don't hate it. After what we've seen these first 2 weeks from Barry Odom's defense, they can play with some teams much better than people thought, and much better than what they were at any point during the Chad Morris era. And I realize that's not saying much, but you know, I'm looking at this team and I'm thinking, man, defensively, they're just in the right spots. That's the biggest difference with this team. It looks like a team that's well prepared and actually knows how to adjust to its competition. And to me, like, there's going to be offenses that are going to make mistakes. And as you saw from KJ Costello, and Arkansas is now in a position where it can actually take advantage of that. It's not going to be, this is a wide open pick-six opportunity, and Arkansas just drops the ball. No, I think that they're actually going to start to make those plays this year. And you know what? If you had them winning 2-3 games, you feel pretty good about it. And I'm starting to think 1-9 was underestimating this team, because it's been a really good start. This has been about as good a start as you could have hoped for if you're an Arkansas fan.
Well, and everybody from the top all the way down to the last fan in the stadium or on the radio broadcast now is bought into the coaching staff. I think it took a win in order to do that. But you talk about game plan. There's something about the messaging from these coaches that has these guys buying in. Grant Morgan, Bumper Pool. Right now, there might not be a better linebacking duo in the SEC, and that's being a little hyperbolic. But then again, they are 1-2 in the country in total tackles. Jalen Catalon is right there, second in the country in solo tackles. So if I were to look at, a thing that's on the field, not the game plan necessarily in and of itself, the one thing that stands out, aside from this team looking tougher, they tackle now. They didn't tackle the last 2 years. This is basic as it gets defensively, but man, they didn't miss any tackles on Saturday, and that was huge. That's how Mississippi State, that's how the Air Raid wins, by getting yards after the catch. They got virtually none.
What did I say coming into this year? That Barry Odom was going to be for Arkansas what Mike McIntyre was to Ole Miss last year. And if you remember these Ole Miss defenses, 2017, 2018, and how bad they were, you saw that improvement at a place like Ole Miss, where all of a sudden, they could actually tackle. They could actually stay on the field, and they weren't just an automatic 300 rushing yards allowed. And you see Arkansas looks like a team that is prepared. And they have these guys who, despite this offseason when there's been really limited tackling across college football, and I think that's been kind of a theme that we've seen so far through through September, is that you're seeing an Arkansas team that really doesn't miss a whole lot of tackles. And I think, the linebackers that you bring up, I was saying that coming into this year, I think that Bumper Pool can be for Arkansas what Nick Bolton was for Mizzou last year. Nick Bolton, in my opinion, is as good of a linebacker as there is in college football. And part of that was because playing in Barry Odom's system, and Ryan Walters, the defensive coordinator who is still at Mizzou, they put him in spots to be all over the place. They really maximize his talent. Bumper Pool's everywhere. I mean, dude had 20 tackles the other day. Like, he is the type of guy who, I don't know if it's just as simple as the system that he's in, right place, right time, whatever it is, but they have tapped into all of those skills, and his instincts are right now at a very high level, and it's exactly what Arkansas needed. And, we've seen Dijon Harris, a guy like him, who's been important for Arkansas, but usually it's, making those tackles at the second level because nobody else can make them. Arkansas are the guys that can make tackles as well, and that's the exciting thing that you look and you see. It's very evident with this defense early on.
Speaking to Connor O'Gara here on Halftime. Connor, the last time the Arkansas Razorbacks had a losing streak like this was 17 games, and then you go and you beat LSU during the Brett Bielema era, and then after that you really started to see this team. At that point, we thought turning a tide, and then you saw the shutout with Ole Miss, and the defense of that team was kind of what almost propelled this team to that big bowl victory over Texas. What can a victory like this now under Sam Pittman, the way that you beat Mississippi State, and it wasn't necessarily with offense, like I think a lot of us thought you would have to win this game in a shootout. You won it because of defense. So overall, from like your perspective, what does a win like this change the outlook for this Razorback football season?
I think it's important, and not in a way that it was last year. You know, we made the jokes about club dub, right? Like when Arkansas wins a game against a group of 5 opponent, they celebrate in the locker room, and it's, Chad Morris was trying to make winning fun, and I remember that was a storyline for a minute. This felt different. This felt like, hey, we actually now have a roster that can stay on the field with an SEC team, and that to me shows that there are better days ahead. And I don't necessarily think that Arkansas is getting to a 4-6 mark or 5-5 or anything like that this year. I think there are going to be tough moments, and I think that there are going to be teams that are able to take advantage of them in the trenches. And I think that Felipe Franks is going to be Felipe Franks. I don't think that's necessarily changing. The highs and lows are going to be there, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, I do think a game like this you can look back on this and say, look, guys, like, it's there. I mean, you guys can stop a really, really good offense, and you can hang with these teams. Now, in that division, if you got a weakness, it's going to get exposed. That is the nature of the beast in the SEC West. But, at the same time, I do feel like this does feel like a bit of a turning point. It does feel like a key foundational start for this Arkansas program with Sam Pittman.
I think when you look all across the SEC, what Barry Odom did Saturday against Mississippi State, did that provide a blueprint for other SEC head coaches and defensive coordinators of how to slow down, not necessarily shut down the air raid, but slow it down to the point where Arkansas found success? They took away half the yards from what they had against LSU.
Yeah, I had one of my Mississippi State buddies texting me. He's like, and that's officially the last time we will ever see man-to-man coverage this year because, oh, my goodness. I mean, night and day. If you are a defensive coordinator and you play man coverage on this Mississippi State squad, what in the world are you doing? Like, look at what Barry Odom did. You have 3 guys up front, you drop 8 into coverage. You hope that your 3 guys up front can get some pressure on the quarterback to at least make him think about those throws and rush him and force him into some tight windows, stuff like that. I made this comp before. It's a lesser version of this, obviously, but Kevin Steele last year ran this 3-1-7 against LSU, and Auburn had more success against that historic LSU offense than anyone in the country. And then after that game, Georgia tried to do that to LSU, Clemson tried to do that to LSU, but they couldn't. And they couldn't because they didn't have the personnel up front like Derek Brown, like Marlon Davidson, to be able to get pressure on the quarterback to make that a tougher, quicker window. And there are going to be teams that are going to try exactly what Arkansas did. And I don't think everybody's going to be able to execute that. I think Mississippi State still has big offensive days in its future. It's going to have to adjust, though, because in these first 2 weeks, I mean, you saw like the ultimate Jekyll and Hyde type of performance from this offense, and knowing how different those approaches were defensively, yeah, a whole lot of people are going to be calling up Barry Odom saying, how'd you do it, and show us the way.
A couple more things here, Connor, and I want to finish on a thought with Arkansas-Auburn, but it's some things that haven't changed at all this year, and those things would be Auburn still doesn't belong on the same field as Georgia. I mean, they got pushed around pretty physically Saturday. And do you think Texas A&M is regretting talking 2020 up so much for the last 2-3 years? Because, I mean, they had their heads handed to them by Alabama worse than they did the past 4 years.
Yeah, let me start with Georgia, just because I was skeptical of Georgia, and I was dead wrong with the quarterback situation. I said JT Daniels has to be the guy. I thought he was for sure going to start now that he was cleared to play, and that didn't prove to be the case. Stetson Bennett was really good, was good in the spots that he needed to be executing Todd Monken's offense. That offensive line got after it. That defense, oh my goodness. This has potential to be one of the best SEC defenses we've seen in the 21st century. I mean, I really believe that, watching how they got after Bo Nix. That was darn impressive. That was a statement, hey, don't count us out of the national title picture type of game for Georgia. The Dogs are for real, and if they have a quarterback in Stetson Bennett, that makes them all the more dangerous, because we know that you don't need to score 30, 40 points to be able to win a game if you're Georgia. Now, for A&M, man, I agree with you. I think that I thought it was stupid that so much was made of the schedule, and why this should be the year for A&M as a result of that, and why there were people who ranked them in their top 5 or top 6 to start off the year. I hated that because of how much they struggled against good competition last year. And Saturday showed you, like, they're still so far off. They were a 3-score favorite, and they couldn't even cover that spread. This is year 3 of the Jimbo Fisher era. He's had 2 consecutive top 6 recruiting classes. He's got the most experienced quarterback in the SEC. He's retained both of his coordinators all 3 years that he's been there. And, oh, by the way, he got $75 million guaranteed. At some point, you have to be able to say, hey, we're not just going to be the team that beats up on the lesser teams in the SEC. At some point, you have to be able to say, hey, we're going to go on the road and win a game. They're 2-7 on the road in true road games during the Jimbo Fisher era. Sooner or later, they have to be able to figure it out. I do think that they regret some of the stuff that was coming out preseason. This very much felt like it should be a New Year's Six type of season for A&M, but man, I am not banking on that happening for this Aggie squad. They have a long ways to go, and you saw it on Saturday. There is a talent disparity and a development disparity more than anything else.
Yeah, and I'll join you about the idea of Stetson Bennett the fourth. I didn't think that he would start at all, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Kirby Smart handles that. By the way, we have to refer to him as Stetson Bennett the fourth. Every single time. You can't be a fourth and not at least have that referred to every time. So I want to ask about Auburn. They could not run against Georgia at all. They have had no problem running against Arkansas the last couple of years. What are you seeing on Saturday? I mean, we're looking 5 days ahead, but everybody here feels a heck of a lot better about these chances for Arkansas to finally upset Auburn than they did even 3 days ago.
Well, so we're talking about how replicable is Barry Odom's defensive game plan for other defensive coordinators in trying to stop Mississippi State. How replicable is Georgia's defensive game plan to be able to stop Auburn? I don't know, because Georgia is so disciplined, it's scary. I mean, like, they're like, if you watch all of their defenders, it's like they make the perfect play every single time. They get off blocks. They do things, and especially with the depth that they have at the pass rushers, where it just seems like there's just always another guy. There's always a Nolan Smith. There's always a Nakobe Dean that can get after you, and that's what Auburn really struggled with, especially with all that inexperience that they have on the offensive line with 4 new starters there. I think Arkansas can give them some problems. I really do. I don't think this Chad Morris offense is in shape to be able to do the heavy lifting. I mean, have you guys ever heard that sentence before in Arkansas? Like, is that familiar to kind of discount Chad Morris's offensive prowess? Because, my goodness, I mean, he got dominated in every possible way on Saturday, and I think that this is a much more intriguing matchup for Auburn. Now, obviously, Bo Nix had some success against Arkansas last year, but this is a very different Arkansas defense. That's the biggest thing, and I think this game has potential to be a 60-minute battle, and I might not have said that coming into this season, but yeah, I mean, I give Auburn a pretty decent chance of being able to do some things up front that are going to confuse Bo Nix, and if he continues to fade off to his right and make all of these throws on the run and essentially take away half the field, yeah, I like Arkansas's chances of being able to stay with Auburn for 4 quarters.
Always a good conversation, Connor, and you certainly deserve some kudos for picking the Arkansas win over State a couple of weeks ago. So well done, and now change your pick for this weekend, and we'll see how that goes.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.